And sort of he was triggered sort of thinking about a convention hall because back in 1921 there was a major fight, a boxing match in this country. It was held up in Jersey City. It was between Jack Dempsey and the French hero Carpentier. And Dempsey trained in Atlantic City, trained over in what we call Bader Field now. And people from the area would go there. My aunt actually went to go there to see him. She told me stories about it. And of course, Nucky was there and made a lot of arrangements to have security and everything else. But Dempsey was quite a great champion. And when the fight was staged, it was the first $1 million sport in boxing. And it was an international event, the first time that took place. And it was staged at Boyle's Field outside of Jersey City, which was Frank Haig's bailiwick. And it was staged there because they wanted to come into New Jersey because they couldn't go into New York. At that time, boxing wasn't allowed in New York until Mayor Walker later changed it. And 91,000 people were at this field. And it was all built, stadium, out of wood at that time. It wasn't an outdoor, it wasn't an indoor stadium, it was all outdoor. And there was no real seating, good seating arrangements. And it was a dusty field, but all these people were there. And Nucky, thinking about that, said, what a great thing to have a convention hall where all these people could be inside, and it'd be such a great thing for Atlantic City. And that triggered his thinking that convention hall would work in Atlantic City, because at that time, conventions were a new industry. It was just coming along. The hotels were getting bigger, the convention organizations were getting bigger, and his thought was a convention hall. And at that time, there was a great park where the convention hall now sits, and it occupied the same space called Rendezvous Park, and that burned down. And that was a great site for the convention hall. And then the question is, how do you get the money to raise that? And Nucky, and he had, how do you first of all acquire the ground? So he had a referendum, and he told Mayor Bader he would take care of that. And he campaigned for all the different churches and all the different groups, and they won the election, and they decided to acquire the ground. Then he had to get state approval for the bonding, and again he went back to Frank Haig in North Jersey, and he had the approval for the bonding, and the hall was built. And it was an amazing accomplishment at that period in our country, a little city like Atlantic City building the largest convention hall in the world. And then it became a reality. Then we had a state senator down here called Richards, who some of you may know. I know Boone knows all about him. And he was an expert on organs, on designing and playing them, and an international expert actually. And he went to Nucky and said that convention hall, you could have a grand organ in there. You'd have one person entertain the whole hall, rather than having bands and all the other expensive things. And he wanted to design an organ for that hall. And it would cost like $3 or $5 million at that time. And eventually, Nucky agreed to it, and it was built. And it was the largest organ in the world. Unfortunately, when they did the remodeling, they damaged pretty extensively some of the main parts of it. That's under restoration right now, and it's pretty near completion. And the hall opened with a great deal of fanfare. We had the Nucky arranged through EDGE to have the Vice President of the United States there. Governor Roosevelt from New York, before he became president, was there. And they had the battleship offshore, Wyoming. And it was hailed as a major accomplishment for Atlantic City. This little city, to build such a great convention hall and have it taken off with the style in which he did things.